officially greet everybody to this month's Zoom call for the Pickleball Noise Relief Group. We have a Facebook group, at this point 650 members, and we have a YouTube channel tracking hotspots across the country. We have a master list of about 260, I think, at this point. And what we're trying to do is solve the problem of in impulsive noise. Pickleball noise is very unique, and we acknowledge that it can be very harmful, both psychologically and physically. And I wanted to introduce myself real quick. Nalini Lasiewicz. I've been a resident of Southern California for many years, and I started a nonprofit about 30 years ago, mostly having to do with human rights issues, and also status of women was a big focus. And I've been celebrating March 8th, which is International Women's Day, for over 30 years. And for the first time, I'm celebrating March 3rd, which is called World Hearing Day. And this is an event sponsored by the World Health Organization. And they want to shine a focus on impacts to hearing and hearing health. I wanted to invite a couple of absolutely remarkable, energetic noise activists that I've become acquainted with. But let me bring forward my co-host here, Rob Mastroianni. Rob started the Pickleball Relief Group, Pickleball Noise Relief Group, and he just came back from a weeks-long listening tour along the East Coast. And Rob, if you could, chime in and say hello to everybody.
Yeah, hi. No, this is great. I'm glad you organized this. What I did, guys, I went down to visit our Florida hotspots, and I met with about 6 or 7 of those. And I got to know the state, and more importantly, of course, I got to know the individuals that were, that are dealing with this problem. And my takeaway from this was making connections. I think Nalini spoke to that earlier, obviously, and that's, you can make connections online, but until you actually see people face to face, there's nothing like it. It builds trust immediately. So there'll be more to talk about that at a later date, but it was a great trip, and I'm going to go back down. And I think this, Nalini's sort of the social coordinator. I'm like boots on the ground, and I want to, meet as many people as possible and document what's going on, document the suffering, what's happening with their noise situation.
Well, we appreciate that so much, Rob.
That's all I need to say right now.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm going to switch gears very quickly, and I want to, our friend Rajneesh, who lives in British Columbia, he is producing a documentary on the pickleball noise. And we have with us today on the phone Connie Ball. So glad she's here. And where is Connie? Oh, there she is. And I'm going to play a little trailer. It's 4 minutes long, but it really can set the mood for what we are dealing with, and then we can go on to our 2 experts and talk about the larger issue of noise pollution, I would say. So let me just share sound.
The pickleball problem emerged to us on July 18, 2020. All of a sudden, there's 12 of us north-facing, and all of us were being inundated with the harsh and disturbing noises. So I looked up on Coquitlam's website, and they had a news flash stating that the city of Coquitlam, upon consultation with pickleball players, decided to designate Blue Mountain Court as 6 pickleball courts. So all the pickleball players were there playing, up to 24 of them, but no, the city did not contact us nor ask us our opinion. I begged the city to come inside any one of our suites to hear the noise of the pickleball, because it is intrusive. All of us have north-facing. Our bedrooms, our dining room, and our living room. We have no escape because they allowed pickleball to play minimum 12 hours a day. No break, no relief. I am physically disabled and I have other disabilities. I am considered a complex patient, medical patient. I did not realize how much the noise affected me. My quality of life has deteriorated immensely. It's negatively impacted my physical, my mental, and my emotional health to my detriment. All of a sudden, I'm being targeted by pickleball players. The lack of concentration, extreme fatigue, right? You're suspicious of people, what's going on around you because you don't trust people anymore. Dictated to, lied to so many times by the city. It's pointless, right? Carry on because it's frustrating, right? They don't care, right? They have never cared.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. The day that Rajneesh came out to interview you, it was raining, and while he interviewed you, there was no one on the court. But then they went and had lunch, came back, and there were 4 people. But as you said, there's normally there's upwards of 24 people playing, and it's nonstop. And I've talked with you many times over the phone, and I really I'm very moved that you share your story with us. So let me go ahead and introduce to you a couple of gals that I've come to admire so much. Dr. Jamie Banks, she's a healthcare professional, healthcare and environmental scientist. She has a PhD in social policy and health economics from the University of Kent in the UK, and earned her master's degree from Dartmouth Medical School and MIT. She founded the nonprofit called Quiet Communities in 2013 to help find solutions to the problems of harmful noise and pollution affecting communities. Jamie, you are going to be celebrating your 10-year anniversary of the organization this week, isn't that right?
We are. We started in 2013.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And then I'll quickly go ahead and introduce Ingrid Boudet. Am I pronouncing that right, Ingrid?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, good. Ingrid lives in Toronto, Canada, and like many modern cities, it's a densely populated urban center. The topography of skyscrapers, freeways, waterways, all play a role in a cacophony of noise that is impacting millions of people. And so she launched No More Noise Toronto as a grassroots effort to try to influence the upcoming noise bylaw review in her region. She immediately learned the GIS system and began tracking where the noise was coming from. She's collected over 10,000 noise reports on her website that she created. In addition, she's been measuring sound levels with specialized equipment for over 2 years. So these are our guests, and what I want to just jump right first into, since it is World Hearing Day, is the health impacts of noise in general. And Jamie, we kind of picked you up to be the one to talk about this a little bit. She is also on the Noise and Health Committee at the American Heart Association and has been leading efforts to develop policy statements around noise and noise pollution.
Yeah, thank you, Nalini, and I'm happy to be here and glad to see you all on the call. Just a quick correction. I chair the Noise and Health Committee of the American Public Health Association, not the American Heart Association, although we would love for the American Heart Association to get involved with this, because it turns out that cardiovascular impacts are one of the health effects of chronic noise exposure. And I am very glad that my colleague Dan is here joining us. So Dan, really feel free to pitch in. Okay. So this is something Dan and I are very familiar with. There's been a couple of big media articles around noise, and it is gaining greater exposure. We live in a very noisy world. People all over the country in North America are being disturbed by one form of noise or other. It's really comparable to secondhand smoke in the sense that noise is exposing people involuntarily to a harm. So that is the comparison. Okay, so one thing to know about noise is the way it's measured. We're commonly told that noise is a certain decibel level indicating its loudness, but we know that there's other characteristics of noise that are very important in how we react to it. You could have a cello playing a concerto, you could have a lawnmower, they could be the same decibel level, but the human response, of course, is very different. So it's not just decibels, which measure sound energy, it's the frequency spectrum. For instance, does it have a low frequency, strong low frequency component that's bringing your the sound right into your home, carrying loudly over distance, etc.? Or is it a high frequency that dissipates over a relatively short distance and doesn't penetrate walls and windows, but might be more irritating? There's the pattern of it, which, for pickleball certainly is a factor. That constant repetition. How long does it go on? What is the tonality or sharpness of the sound? So there's many characteristics that play into how we respond to noise. So the point is, it's not just loudness or decibel measures as such, it's all these different things. If it was just decibels, the sound of a dripping water faucet would never bother us. But we know that that's the kind of sound that can really irritate us and kind of drive us crazy. There's, of course, auditory impacts to noise, damage, noise-induced hearing loss, which Dan can certainly talk to. Tinnitus, hyperacusis, or a heightened sensitivity to sound that can even cause pain because it involves nerve damage. And then there's sequelae that fall from those over time. It reduces work productivity, I think, like Connie referred to, quality of life, and all these are associated with higher costs. But there's also things that are less intuitive. These are non-auditory impacts, like cardiovascular disease that can develop over time, metabolic disturbances, heightening the risk of obesity and diabetes, increased anxiety and depression, and there's a suspected link to dementia, Alzheimer's and age-related dementia. And then all these kinds of things that the noise is going to interrupt, impairing ability to learn, concentrate, reducing work productivity again, and the same kinds of things that showed on the previous slide. So what happens when you hear noise? Your body responds initially with some kind of stress reaction. It may be because it's interrupting your sleep, your communications, your activities. There can be cognitive and emotional responses, stress and annoyance. Those kind of first line responses is what happens with your body. That in turn is going to cause the release of stress hormones and neurotransmitters by activating what's known as the autonomic nervous system. And then in turn, it's this physiological cascade that happens within the body that's related to the stress reaction. There's increased cardiac output, blood pressure, increase in blood lipids, blood sugar, blood viscosity, and coagulation. And over time, those lead to conditions like hypertension, coronary heart disease, heart failure, and so forth that you see here. And then, of course, there's psychological disturbances. This, courtesy of Dr. Fink here, Dan, he prepared this, and I thought this is great because it gives a sense of the time frame that we're talking about. So immediately what happens as a result of that first reaction is your blood pressure can increase, your pulse can increase. Within a few minutes, you have that activation of the what's called the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenocortical axis, which is responsible for dealing with stress in the body and get that increase in cortisol and stress hormones. Within hours, that can cause inflammation. And then over days to months, when you're constantly exposed to that noise, blood pressure, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and then over years, heart disease, stroke, and increased mortality. This slide here is from the CDC. I put the noise in here. It's a general slide about stress, anxiety, and depression, and how it relates to heart disease. So it's really, an indirect path from feeling depressed, powerless, anxious, Connie, all the kinds of things you're talking about. And then, of course, there's other health consequences. And then finally, this slide is really here because we so often hear noise referred to as a nuisance or an annoyance.
Yeah.
And it's really far beyond a nuisance and an annoyance. This statement from the CDC, continual exposure to noise can cause stress, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, heart disease, many other problems like we were just talking about. And then this other statement from the World Health Organization, excessive noise seriously harms human health, interferes with people's daily activities at work, at home, and during leisure time. It can disturb sleep, cause cardiovascular and psychophysiological effects, reduce performance, and provoke annoyance responses and changes in social behavior. These are serious things. They're recognized by international and national health agencies, and yet it's common that people don't take it seriously and revert to saying, oh, it's just an annoyance. And I had one more slide. I don't know if it's pertinent with pickleball particularly, but as it turns out, nighttime noise has more pronounced adverse effects. The exact reason isn't quite known, but it could be because the difference in the ambient noise, the baseline noise, and the source of noise is that much greater and can be more startling. Interrupt sleep, which has its own physiology, an increased level of stress hormones, and it changes biochemistry that can have long-term effects on blood vessels and systemic health. So I will stop there. I'd like to invite Dan to comment, add anything that's needed.
Thank you, Jamie. You did, as always, a superb job. A handful of comments. I want to emphasize that these physiologic reactions to noise by the human body are involuntary. They cannot be habituated to. A number of studies done by what is now the leading research group in the world on the adverse health effects of noise, the group led by Thomas Munzel in Mainz, Germany, and lead author on these 2 or 3 papers is a man, last name Schmidt. I forget his first name, but they did experiments where they recorded aircraft flight noise, and then had the people, I think, trying to sleep, and they checked the physiologic responses, and even when they thought they got used to it, they didn't. And a recent paper showed that these changes are occurring at the molecular level. In terms of annoyance, I'll be speaking on Tuesday at the UC Davis Aviation Noise and Emissions Symposium in Palm Springs, and the FAA defines noise as annoyance, but being annoyed every time you hear a noise, your concentration is interrupted, your conversation may be interrupted. It's stressful, and annoyance causes stress. Stress causes inflammation of the vascular lining, which leads to the cardiovascular disease and mortality. There's an article I think it's in the current issue of Circulation. It's only available online. Thanks to Jamie for calling it to my attention. I'll mention it when I speak in Palm Springs. It's called Strengthening the Pillars of Cardiovascular Health. Psychological health is a crucial component. In terms of noise being understood as harmful, one of the contributions that, with the help of the group assembled by Jamie, that we've been able to make, is redefining noise. It's not yet in Merriam-Webster, but my new definition of noise, which I published in 2019, if you Google new definition of noise, and Daniel Fink, it should pop up. It's open access. The standard definition of noise is unwanted sound. That means that those of us who are complaining about noise must have something wrong with us, not there's a problem with noise. And the new definition is noise is unwanted and or harmful sound, which is a little bit of an awkward construction, although my German-speaking colleagues in Europe assure me this is no problem in their language. So the new definition was adopted for use by the International Commission on Biologic Effects of Noise last year at the 14th ICBEN Congress in Belgrade, Serbia. And Jamie was also kind enough to include it as the opening sentence of the abstract for the revised American Public Health Association policy on noise, which again is open access. If you Google American Public Health Association noise policy statement, that will pop up. And finally, in terms of nighttime noise from pickleball, I've heard anecdotally, Nalini, correct me if I'm wrong, that in some places they illuminate the pickleball courts and people play until 9 or 10 at night. And nighttime noise, as Jamie said, is particularly bad. It has been linked by researchers in Switzerland, linked directly to heart attacks, and it disrupts sleep. And there's a wonderful editorial by Matthias Bosner, who's the world's expert on sleep disrupting noise, in the journal Sleep, all capital letters, SLEP, and that's also open access. And anyone for whom pickleball noise is a sleep problem should track that down. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I come not from a background such as Jamie and Daniel with the academia and the history. I come from the background of somebody who simply had enough. And I think that might be similar to many people, where you're living in your home and suddenly there is a harmful sound. First, it was unwanted. And then I was like, why am I feeling this way? And it's because that sound is harmful. I see Ingrid, please show your recording device. Yes, I will. Thank you. So it was one of those things where I started doing research on noise in the city of Toronto, and the city of Toronto was looking at doing its noise bylaws in the mid-20s, about 2016, 2017. And luckily enough, they commissioned the Toronto Public Health to do a study called How Loud is Too Loud. And there is a professor there, and his name is Dr. Tor Oyamo, and he's at Toronto Metropolitan University. And I read this and I looked at his maps, and I saw that they were using averages. And as we all know, averages take out those unique sound nuances that drive me bonkers. I'll be honest. They take out those spikes that you see behind me. And so I thought, no, this isn't what I'm living with. So I bought myself a sound level meter, and I've bought myself two different types now. So the one that you see with the spikes behind me is not the one that I'm going to show you the graphs from today, because I wanted something. I was so angry that I was like, I want something that holds up in court. And the lady that I bought it from was like, wow. I'm like, no, I am really angry. And I didn't realize that I was actually there's a community of us out there. And so I started tweeting on Twitter when it was still Twitter, and I was like, is anybody else really angry? And I found out that yes, there's a whole bunch of people who are really angry. But I looked at it and it's like, how do you create community around something that's so spread out and also very individual? But so I was like, so I've learned that people have a very individual relationship to sound. So I'm going to show you a graph of somebody who lives on a street where there's lots of sirens. And some people are like, whoa, I hear a siren. That means somebody's having a worse day than I am. Well, other people, it drives them nuts. And for me, it's motor vehicles. And that's where I feel that I am subjected to this 24/7 all the time. And it wasn't this case. I've learned that there's something called a preconditional agreement, where when you move into a place, you go, okay, I live close to a highway. I used to be able to have a nap on my balcony living close to that highway. Something changed. It wasn't me, it was the environment. And that's where I realized there's this kind of induced hopelessness that comes from sound, because we have no defense. Back to the, I love that noise is an involuntary exposure to a harm. Absolutely, we have no choice. We have to breathe. That's why secondhand smoke made such a big impact. Well, guess what? We can't close our ears. And as Daniel Fink has said, and both of them, we can't stop listening. And we all know that. So I'm just going to dive a little bit into my website, because what I did was I wanted to create community. And I thought, well, how do I create community? We like to complain, so let's complain. So I looked at the three. In Toronto, we have what's called 311, and that is how you connect with the city to complain about a broken garbage can lid, a dead raccoon, or a noise complaint. And I tried to do that process. And as we all know, like, you can complain about a pickleball, but then when the people come, they're gone, or it's a new set of pickleballs, you know, or that kind of thing. So noise is very hard to enforce. It's hard to monitor. So I looked at the process for motor vehicle noise in particular, reporting motor vehicle noise, and it's broken. So I am attacking, or I'm pointing fingers at both the process and the noise itself and why it's there. So I created, and what Nalini was referring to was the Not 311 noise report. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, so this is my website called No More Noise Toronto. And I basically learned GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems, to do this. And I'm going to hop right over into this page here. So I created what's called the Not 311 Noise Report. And what it is, it's a way. I've got 3 different surveys. I've got a short form, a long form, and a text friendly, because this actually also started because I have a friend who's blind. And I was like, oh my goodness, how do you navigate the city? Because without visual cues, you know, she walks by a cement truck or something like that. We have constant construction in Toronto. All her cues are muffled, and her word for navigating our city is terrified, which no one should have to do. We've got over 10,000 noise reports. So I started this a few years ago, and what it is people are basically able to make a noise report, because when people call the city, you do not know who else, like, how do you rate with somebody else? Do other people say that your area is noisy? Is it, you know, what is it and what is the noise? So here you can scroll into Toronto, and you can actually scroll right in, and you can click on some of the dots, and you can actually, it might be a little bit, yeah. So you can see what produced the noise. So this one isn't other, which isn't a great example. But if I go to a couple other ones here, so this person, here we got amplified sound and music. What produced it? What was the date and time? So this is starting to create a data set that we as people would never have from our city's process of reporting noise. So this was starting to put data into the hands of people and me. So I'm going to just pull this out a little bit. I'm going to close this window. And this is actually a global application. So I'm going to pull right out. And that's one of the reasons why this is powered by ESRI down at the bottom in here. ESRI stands for Environmental Systems Research Institute, and they are global. And I kind of had an idea of noise is a global problem. So what about if we start to report noise in other areas? So it is very, we can talk about, so I did a little something for everyone here. I actually added on so we've got the short form, which is for people that just wanna, it's just a very quick form, but for pickleball and long form, it has duration and frequency. So I've opened it up here. You can click on it here. And what it is basically, can somebody I'm just gonna type in, I'm gonna actually type in Coquitlam because I think I know how to spell it. Coquitlam, BC. So it'll zoom over to Coquitlam, BC. And then what I did was I actually used the category of other. And then I can go next. And I put in pickleball for all you folks. So you can report a pickleball court, a pickleball noise. And then, so I'm just going to do that. And I can correct this later, or I can remove the data point. But then I can go next. And so up here, sorry, is date and time, which pre-fills. I brought this up at 6:30 p.m. But here you have how long you are experiencing that. So is it, maybe that's 1 to 5 hours. I've used this for amplified sound, and I've also used this for airplane noise. And then level of annoyance. Referred to Dr. Tor Oyamo earlier, and he helped me. He wanted me to put level of annoyance in here because that's kind of what's starting the whole stress cycle that that Jamie was talking about earlier. So so then you can put level of annoyance 9, 10, whatever that may be. 5 hours to all day is how long you hear it. And then next becomes, this is the frequency. How many times do you notice this during the day? And I added this because leaf blowers are something else that drives people kind of bonkers. But because it was allowed in the City of Toronto bylaws, people were not allowed to report it. So to me, they're dealing with an incomplete data set. You cannot know the extent of the problem when you do not allow people to report it. So you can report all noise reports at all time on this website.
So impressive. And y'all, you can see why I invited Ingrid to be here. And now can you show them a little bit about your sound measurements? You've been doing it for 2 years, right? And
yeah, so this was a little bit how this all got started, because during COVID, the streets were empty for those 2 blessed months when it was just really nice and quiet. That was the silver lining that I think woke a lot of us up to, oh, maybe we don't need to deal with this noise all the time. So I heard one motorcycle and I timed it, and it was 10 minutes. And I was like, wow, how many people does that impact? So that's part of, so I use these measurements. They are done by a company called Convergence Instruments out of Canada. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick again. But what I have here is I basically take measurements from people's windows, from people's homes, because that's what Tor Oyamo was saying. He was basically saying that we don't know enough about noise at the bedroom window. So this is somebody's home for 3 weeks. The World Health Organization suggests that we sleep at 45 decibels. 45 decibels is the very bottom of the chart. 55 decibels is where the old number, where health impacts start. That's right here. They never reach that. And you can see the fluctuations between day and night. And what I wanted to know was how are people impacted? And so this is actually allowing me to count noise spikes. So I'm going to go into that real quick, but I do just want to show you. So for example, I can scroll in. So nighttime noises are particularly impactful. So let's just go. So 000 is midnight. So this is where I can start to see where those noise impacts are. So here at 12:30 at night, they had 105 decibels. And as they were saying, this isn't just, so I actually have L peak in here, which is sound pressure level. And if I show that plot, this actually shows the sound pressure level that's in there. And that confuses a lot of people, so that's why I take that away, generally. So back to the measurements. So then I can count peaks. So they had an average decibel level of 70 for the 3 weeks. So I add 10 decibels to this. This is my own homemade kind of idea of how I would establish what a peak is. So I add 10 decibels to it. And then it actually counts the number of peaks for me, which I then put into an Excel chart. And so here is, so this is Bay and Bloor siren noise. These are the days of the week. And this is how many peaks they had above 80 decibels in those 24 hours. Wow. So when I translate this to, I'm going to stop sharing here. So when I translate this to pickleball, you can have one of these meters at your home, and then you can actually see, or I don't know, but measuring using equipment and having data takes it from an emotional argument of I'm angry, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, to no, this is actually what I am being impacted by. And that's what's starting to make a difference.
I'm going to ask a couple quick questions. I know our group probably has some more too, but first of all, the equipment that you're using, roughly how much does a recorder cost?
So these ones only collect data on a data card, which maximum goes for 3 weeks on power, 1 week on battery, and they're about $600 US.
Right. Okay.
If you want to get them with a Wi-Fi card, so that if you plug them into power, then they take the data and beam it up to the cloud and back to a dashboard. Those are closer to $800 US. But then you have 24/7 constant monitoring.
And I'm going to go very quickly, a health question for our previous speakers. So when we look at all those symptoms and reactions, physical, emotional, mental reactions to noise, how does that affect the people who are actually playing? You know, they're exposed. Most of the pickleball players that I read about are playing 3, 4, 5 times a week. Are they having health impacts?
Nalini, I've actually never thought about that. So I'm thinking on my feet here, but I think there's a big difference between voluntary exposure to anything.
Barry Wireman, you're an engineer. You're working with mitigation things. What do you say to this issue?
I would agree that if you are voluntarily exposing yourself to this, and whatever you're measuring at a meter, sound increases by 6 decibels for every halving of distance that it gets closer. So if I'm playing pickleball, and I am a pickleball player, so I experience this, but the sound is loud. There are NIOSH guidelines on noise exposure, but that is a very, very complicated thing of time and duration. And most people who understand pickleball recognize that the pickleball impulse is it's a 10 to 20 millisecond, very, very short interval. You just get a lot of them. If I were a pickleball player and I were concerned about that, I would probably have earphones on. But I think that in reality, the duration is so small that if you wore a noise dosimeter, which factory personnel often wear to judge their noise exposure, it would not be near as offensive as if you were working in a continuous noisy factory environment. That doesn't.
Why is that?
It's not bothersome.
Well,
And why is that? Why is the dosimeter not able to pick up the exposure to pickleball?
It will pick up the exposure to pickleball, but you have to realize that the pickleball sound impulse is a very, very short click or a pop. Right. It lasts for such a short interval, just as I think we heard. As far as the measurement, if you measure an average for pickleball sound, you will grossly underestimate. I think Ingrid would agree with me on this. If you take average measurements, you grossly underestimate the annoyance and the level. Because
that is the problem. That is the problem that we're having, is that people are taking averages and it's not reflecting what people are actually hearing. So we need to take peak level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These meters measure by the second.
A second is too long.
It's too long.
We need to measure, we're talking about it comes to a peak in 2 milliseconds. I get that it degrades after 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, but to be able to capture that 2 millisecond peak is extremely difficult for any instrument. And that is the problem we're having. So when someone is hearing pickleball noise, they're hearing 90 decibels, right? 85 decibels, but no one else, it's not being recorded. So that's the biggest, impediment to people understanding that it's a problem. I'm
going to ask Jamie to weigh in.
Yeah, so I was just going to talk more about the stress reaction and the, longer term effects. I think and I don't know the science on this, and I don't even know how much science there is, but I think that feeling angry, frustrated, outraged is going to generate a very different physiological response in the body. than being active, enjoying, and not even paying attention. You know, what happens in the body that's negative is really like a fight or flight sort of reaction where your body's releasing cortisol and you go into that cascade, and it's constant because you're being annoyed or disturbed over and over and over again. So you know, again, it's hypothesizing because I don't know the science well enough, but I think that there's probably a big difference in that regard. The hearing, I'm just, you know, not so sure about.
Can
Danielle,
I
did you have-
say something?
Absolutely.
All this started during COVID. I was told because I have no immune system, clinically extremely vulnerable, and I've been upgraded to severely immunocompromised from the Crohn's. I was told to stay home by many specialists because if I went out there with it, I could die. So I didn't want that. And then I've been hospitalized with cardiac problems in April. And that's from the stress dealing with the city and what their meetings and that they joke about. I have been sworn at. I have been gestured. One gentleman tried to hit me with the car. I do not feel safe. I cannot walk or run like normal people. Prior to my stroke, I probably would have liked pickleball. I played tennis, golf. I did all sorts of baseball. I did all sorts of sports. I have not a problem with the game of pickleball. I have a problem with where they are allowed to play. And they don't care if you're in Coquitlam. Our bylaw says the city shall not allow noise from neighboring, in the neighboring properties. What is it? Sorry. To take away our quality of life as a peaceful, quiet home. City don't care. I have 1,000 pickleball players on a site that they put my picture up from 2 years ago, targeting me, and they also targeted Ragnish from Chilliwack.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Connie. It's our heart breaks for that. Dan, you had something to say, and then Barry.
Yeah, I just want to say that Jamie and I have focused on involuntary noise exposure. So I've actually never thought about voluntary noise exposure. So Nalini, you raised an interesting point. I have not seen any literature about that, but I will look for it. But that's not been our focus.
I think it was what Jamie was saying. If it's the reaction to the sound, if you love it, if it's giving you all kinds of other benefits, then I guess your body can accommodate it. You've got your hand raised, Jamie. Do you want to speak to that again, or?
No, I was just, the problem is really kind of a systemic problem. There's so little awareness of noise as a public health issue. It's called a nuisance, it's called an annoyance. People in healthcare don't really know about it, no less, city planners and people making decisions about where to site things. They just say, oh, we'll just put the pickleball courts right next to somebody's home. They don't know any better.
I do want to get to Mark. He has a quick question.
Yeah, more an observation. I just want to say how much I thought that the comparison to secondhand smoke really resonated with me, because, I'm always trying to get people who have never been exposed to pickleball, never played pickleball, particularly some people with the city that I live in, where I'm trying to help them understand the issue. And a lot of times people say, well, we're going to institute quiet paddles. It's going to reduce the sound by 50%. And the secondhand smoke issue is so comparable. I mean, if you think about, you put it in this way that people can understand, when you used to walk to the back of a plane and you would have to walk through, a big, area of blue smoke, if you said to somebody, well, you know what, I'm just going to cut that amount of smoke in half, it's no less disturbing. It's no less annoying. It's just, it's no
Right.
if you can smell smoke, it's not good, and if you can hear pickleball, it's not good. So I like the way that that's a nice comparison to what we're dealing with in the pickleball issue.
Thanks so much. Barry, you had something?
Mr. Mastroianni made a very good point, which I don't think can be ignored, and that is this pickleball sound is very, very short duration, but there's a lot of them. We're all here because the local noise ordinances are deficient. I can take a noise ordinance and I can go out and measure pickleball noise that I would consider annoying, and I could game the system by having, as Rob says, a 1 second average. You will not measure a very loud impulse in 1 second, and you may only get 15 impulses in 1 minute from one pickleball court. Now, if there are multiple courts, you're going to have multiple impulses. So I think the reason we're all here is so many of these local ordinances are deficient, and the reality is that so many of these homeowners associations and parks and recreations or organizations are caving in to petitions to convert unused pickleball courts or unused tennis courts to pickleball courts without doing their due diligence. And the reality is if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And
that's
just the reality.
Yeah.
The associates that I work with in terms of noise mitigation were approached by a California community to add an addendum to their noise ordinance that specifically addresses pickleball.
Yeah. Yeah.
We proposed something, and we have some metrics that we use in our site assessment that we think are better than some of the ordinances out there. We never heard back from them.
Pickleball VC has limited the courts to, you should not put a line tennis court for pickleball if residents are within 150 meters, which is 500 feet. What they forget to say is that in my situation, I live in a condo. I'm on the 3rd floor. They laughed. They put the acoustic baffling on it. Well, guess what? Noise goes up and a bit above the baffling. Because of my stroke, I have noise sensitivity. Didn't realize it until the pickleball came, because I'm a passenger on a motorcycle. That never bothers me. It's the pickleball that goes right into my kitchen, bathroom, bedroom.
It's also venting. So I have motorcycle noise in my shower, and it's because the vents just come right from the inside to the out. There's nothing, and I'm in a condo. There's no way I can move to the quieter bedroom. My bedroom is my bedroom.
Right.
I'm just going to make a couple of points here. And one was there's a pickleball court close to me. So I'm going to take my meters on a sunny day that is coming, I'm sure. And I'll see what they show. And I'm happy to share that with Nalini and Rob. And then we'll see where it goes. And Jamie, of course.
Right.
And the other thing that I just wanted to say was about ordinances and bylaws. And you can have the best bylaw in the world, but if there's no enforcement of it, so if you want to, the placement of the pickleball courts or whatever is one thing, but then, if you have the placement, but they say, oh, we're only going to do it from 9 to 5 or whatever, then you need to have somebody to enforce, which is just the wrong process. And that's one of the things that we're finding. Our police forces are stretched. Our city budgets are minimal, and so we need to be smart. And so that's where I'm starting to talk to a lot of people about area sound level monitoring, so that it's not up to a resident to complain, it's up to the city to monitor and enforce proactively.
Thank you.
Well, I want to wrap up our call today. I'm so grateful to Ingrid and Jamie for joining us, and Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Barry, all of our guests. It's just great to see you all. I want to let you know that in April, we are going to launch a new project called the Model Ordinance, Pickleball Model Ordinance Project. I mentioned at the top that I started a foundation or a nonprofit about 30 years ago. I am going to use that as the umbrella for organizing this effort. That way we can get some donations that'll be tax deductible, and we'll be able to share something that'll be an effective tool, I think, for all of us. And then also in April is International Noise Awareness Day. Jamie, can you let people know a little bit about that and how you guys are going to be celebrating?
Yeah, sure. I think Karen Akins was on this call, but I don't see her here now. So Karen produced a film called The Quietest Year, and it is really the story of what's happening in Vermont, the noise that's being emitted and really disturbing neighborhoods there, from military aircraft noise all the way down to roosters next to people's houses. But it's a very, very well done movie. It's really a microcosm of what's going on around the country, and I highly recommend it. We're going to be showing it on demand virtually from April 24th to the 30th. And then there'll be a Q&A Zoom session on the 30th to wrap it up. But we'll be promoting that starting fairly soon, and hope that people will be able to join. It will be free to members of Quiet Communities. It's $15 for people that are not members. And we want to broadcast it as widely as we can. Yeah.
So thank you again, everybody, for coming today. Rob, if you'd like to say some closing words, and then we'll close the recording and we'll keep the room open for as long as people want to talk.
No, just thanks very much. Ingrid, I really wanted to hear more about the GIS. I got to hear more about, it's fantastic, and thank you for doing that. I mean, I can't wait to, if we can, just thanks for letting us get involved with that. And I probably haven't had enough sleep, so sorry if I'm a little prickly.
Okay. Well, again, thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to turn off the recording and say we'll see you next month.